Hey, so I'm Chase Cunningham or Dr. Cunningham or Dr. Zero Trust if you follow me on social or LinkedIn or any of that stuff. But let's get into some important things. I'm actually here at National Harbor. You can tell I had to dress like a grown up and put pants on, whatever else, with some great folks from the Athena security group. Let's, have you guys kind of talk about who you are, what you do, and we'll just go down the rabbit holes.
All right, great. You want me to kick off?
Yeah,
I'm going to kick off.
Peter Worth, co-founder and president CEO of Athena Security Group, and we started a company a little over a year ago, kind of in response to, this sort of AI wave as it relates to cyber, which we've talked a bunch about, and kind of in response to, the fragmentation of the market, and people have sort of bought and picked up a couple of pieces here and there over the years to kind of round out their cybersecurity strategy and kind of leaving them exposed in terms of pulling all those pieces together. And kind of in that vein, we were looking for, a platform to build something out that would pull all those pieces together, where we can kind of add AI into the engine from the ground up to, and ultimately enhance the cyber defense profile of our customers and our clients. So we use our own stuff. We launched about, probably 10 weeks ago, give or take, and we're in the market. And, we're super excited about where the market's headed and how well we're positioned, right? So Dan, our CRO.
Yeah. So Dan Bidwell, I have spent 40 years in sales and marketing in high tech, 20 years of that in cybersecurity. And actually, Peter and I both worked at the same startup. So I've done a lot of work with startup companies. And we actually crossed paths at a startup company out in Silicon Valley. And that's kind of where the, relationship kicks off from. When Peter reached out to me, he kind of told me his plan and where he wanted to take this company. And, I was really intrigued, especially in regards to having a platform that everything's integrated and also injecting AI into the platform itself. Obviously, in this day and age, a lot of people are talking about AI. The bad news, I guess, is that, the cyber criminals are using AI too. And so, it was already tough enough. We used to say, hey, they work 24/7 and, you've got to get it right once to defend the attack, if you will. So if they're going to be using AI, you as a security center need to do the same.
So for the folks that listen to this, let's define AI in this context, right? Because if I put 100 marketing people in a room and I said, tell me what AI means for cyber, I get 103 different answers. So how do you guys define AI?
Primarily, right, the modality we're talking about is language, right? From a defensive standpoint, when you're looking at kind of the security landscape that you're defending, you're looking at ingesting all of those alerts, right, and all that information, and then kind of both determining which ones are the highest priority stuff that are anomalous that should be looked at, and then also in terms of trying to determine what your best triage and risk mitigation is. That's really the AI tools and enablement that we have from the ground up. And then right in the center of that, right, you have, which I think is typical for a lot of the ERP players right now, is you're basically bolting a language model right into the center and heart of the platform that's ingesting all of the data from which you can basically have a natural language interface into the security operations platform. One of the nice things about our platform, given that it is kind of a unified view of the security landscape, is the language model itself that we're bolting in has access to all of that data. So once you solve the problem of ingesting it from all the corners of your security landscape, you're now in a position to have a language model that understands all of those pieces over time and can be tailored and tuned to that particular SecOps platform. But primarily it's the language model piece that is important. Now, from an attacker's perspective, right, they have the whole agentic AI application infrastructure that is going to be leveraged. We already saw a couple of weeks ago. Anthropic, right? There's kind of a very interesting take on that, the idea that they actually stopped the attack while at the same time enabling it, right? So you get into the whole kind of jailbreak and AI governance question, which is still kind of trying to be sorted out in the market, but ultimately you can expect bad actors, just like they had ransomware as a service, right? They're going to have agentic platforms that are tailored specifically for cyber, and they're going to use those to deploy. And while you get the US AI providers that may be able to lock that down to some extent, you can certainly expect, just like the way the nation state stuff is segmented today, whether it's China or Russia. China happens to have a great infrastructure for AI, to use those as platforms to launch attacks. So you get the initial scanning capabilities. Where am I attacking? And instead of manually, right, guys going in offensively and deploying modules in that can do internal scales and privilege escalation and all that other stuff, that's fully automated, right? So your agents now are doing that in sort of AI time, rather than, guys doing a custom build and then deploying, right, which could take hours. Now they're behind your firewall, they found it in, and now, within 30 or 45 minutes, they're doing the same amount of damage that they could have done in 3, 4, 5 days, even 6 months or 9 months ago. So you have the offensive perspective, right, which just changes the whole landscape, and then the defense, which has to leverage the same tech but in a different way. That's our perspective. There are a lot of companies, I think, that are pushing kind of the agentic AI defensive solution in response to the offensive solution. I don't like that in particular, because our analysis shows that, at least in specific subject matter areas, particularly around risk mitigation, right, these models are actually around 40 or 50%, right, even some of the commercial models. And so where does that leave you if you're deploying automatic agentic AI from a defensive standpoint? Your error rate is almost 50%, right, as you're deploying solutions as you're being attacked. So, I think it's a much more delicate problem defensively than it is offensively. And the tools are different, right? But, nonetheless, AI is changing the whole cyber landscape.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, like the agentic piece, there's all these people rushing to do agent this, agentic that, and then you've got the adversary doing their side. Like, you potentially wind up in this Cold War-ish type of agent versus agent thing, and what's the odds that something goes wrong with an agent? That to me, it just, like, the hairs on my neck stand up, because it's like we're putting our trust into agentic that we don't really know a lot of agentic stuff is being rolled out. I mean, show me an SBOM for an agent. Like, you're lucky to get SBOM for legacy software. And now you can wake up on a Saturday and be like, I have an idea. If I code an agent.
And if your objective is to just destroy and be disruptive, you're less concerned about what the impact is, right? If you're in charge of an environment that's running a business, right? Like, you got to be a little bit more meticulous and careful about what you're deploying and what it's doing, right? So, we were a Darktrace customer for many years, and I think part of the solution that we're building out is an alternative to that infrastructure. Nonetheless, solid product, and a lot of what they sold, right, and some of their capabilities were around automating the response piece, right, which, on paper, right, makes a lot of sense, but when you're inside the network infrastructure, right, and your initial response is either a block or a quarantine or some other capability, right, you really have to have some analyst that has some sense of what's happening, what the functional kind of impact is of both the response and what the threat is, before you kind of automate those responses, because you don't know what kind of destruction you could potentially do internally.
You can automate crap just like you can, optimize. Like you can automate error just like you can automate success.
Totally. So defensively, it's a harder problem, right? You got to leverage the same tech, but you have to leverage it in a much more, I think, nuanced way. Particularly if the cost of making a mistake is high, right? And, I think that certainly most of the organizations that are running, delicate security infrastructures, right? They don't want to shut down a business unit, right? And then figure out after the fact that, they lost a whole bunch of revenue because they were down for a couple of hours while they quarantined a system that they didn't have to, right? So it's a complex problem when you have to add the business dimension on top of the technical dimension.
Yeah, and it's almost like we're doing internet 2.0, and humans are so bad at learning from our past experiences. I mean, you did it before, and then everybody had to build an industry to solve that problem. And now it's like, well, we can do it at a scale that's a billion X, and then, we'll figure that one out on the later end of this too. Is this a new market sector? Because I mean, you've been in this space, for quite a while. I think there's more vendors kind of vectoring into this area.
Yeah, I would say that. Again, so many cyber vendors have been selling these, siloed solutions. And I really think the industry trend now is starting to move back to the platform approach. And I think what's maybe going to accelerate that is, with the enablement of AI within there. But I was telling Peter a few days ago. I used to work at ArcSight in the very early stages.
I'm sorry. No,
But you talked, SIM. It was, it was the new thing.
It was the hot SIM.
It was
I remember
the hot
our site was hot.
Yeah, exactly. But the problem with it is when I used to hear a lot of customers say, it's like, okay, great, you're capturing all this information. What the hell does it mean? And I don't know. Yeah, exactly. I don't know what to do with it. And so the great thing about this is it's going to be able to put context and priority around the alerts that you should be focusing on. And that'll even tell you what you need to do or be automated to actually do it for you.
Especially if it's a redundant fix for stuff. I mean, I don't need a SOC analyst to spend time doing a password reset or a firewall update or something like that.
Yeah. And and along that same vein, I mean, it's like that's one of the big problems that companies have. They just don't have enough cyber resources in terms of people, right? And you know that well yourself. And these people, burnout is a real issue in the industry.
Well, I mean, the scale of this problem is it's kind of like a double-edged sword because it's not going to be solved with human capital. However, it can't not be solved with human capital.
It's got to be part
scale, right?
Yeah,
that's problem. That's where you guys play pretty strong.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, and you have the domain expertise. Not just around cyber. Right? One of the things that we built out, right, to facilitate this kind of AI-enabled defense is a whole open source CTI data source, right? And that was a necessary condition for us to build a CTI LLM that ultimately plugs into our operations platform. I know you've done some work around this yourself, and you know how specific that stuff is. We just released out of Athena Labs, Athena Bench, which is a benchmark that has about 5 or 6 different functional areas that test these language models specifically around cyber, right? And there are specific domains where it's just not great. One of the things in prior benchmarks that wasn't there, for example, was continuous update, right? So, the research community would publish some of these benchmarks, and then ultimately you're like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do with that? Because, the bad actors are exploiting the stuff from the last 30 to 60-day window, right? So if my LLM doesn't know what the latest exploits and vulnerabilities are and what those attack vectors look like, how am I empowering my analysts? They still got to go out to the web and figure out what's going on, right? And figure out how to mitigate. Now, that may have been okay 6 or 9 months ago, but like now they're in and they're doing bad stuff while you're trying to figure out how to get them out. I mean, and you have the other problem of like, okay, well, once they're in, how do you make sure that they're out? Which has happened in a lot of cases. So we built this whole CTI repository that allows us to train the LLM on an ongoing basis, right? It also allows us and facilitates the testing of these things, right? So, there's the open source Intel piece is a very important part of the picture, from a community standpoint. We're open source, so we're plugged right into that framework, and we want to extend that into sort of the AI domain and leverage that knowledge for our LLMs. And so we had this sort of natural kind of module that we had to build out to facilitate all that stuff, but that's sort of fundamental to empowering that security. When they're looking at an alert, presuming you can get it in near real time, okay, well, what is it, right? Is it a false positive? And then what do I really need to do to mitigate it, right? And how imperative is it really? Like, where's it coming from? What's the threat actor attribution? Which is another area where the models are typically weak, right? Because that's not a...
Yeah, attribution's always like suspect at best.
Exactly, right? So, how do we tune those models to get better at threat actor attribution? Because we know certain groups behave in certain ways and have certain MO in terms of how they kind of move around, right? So, that's been a really interesting exercise in terms of building that out. And we think ultimately is, that edge that we're going to have because our AI capabilities are trained on the latest and have that knowledge, we think is going to, significantly impact the our managed detection and response capability and the SOC of our partners, right? Which is a big part of the value that we're bringing to them.
Yeah, it's a razor's edge to walk that between optimizing and utilization of open source to solve a kind of commercialized problem and do it right, and then you also run into that issue of folks saying like, well, it's open source, how good can it be? But if you're productizing open source, you're making something product worthy.
Yeah,
right. A fair point.
It's been done many times. Right?
It's been done 100.
Yeah,
so there's a whole market.
It's not new.
No, but I guess the follow-on side of that is like, is this an enterprise problem or is this an everybody problem? and I know I'm leading the witness a little bit, but like enterprises trying to solve problems on their own because they're just elephants, right? They can keep eating and ingesting stuff, and then whatever comes out the other end is where it comes out the other end.
Yeah.
Whereas the SMB side, they're having to solve this problem now. You got CMMC coming your way.
Yeah.
You got all the international requirements, and in most of the market, interestingly enough, from the vendor side, seems to be driving towards SMBs.
Yeah.
Is that the impetus for you guys kind of rolling into here?
Yeah. I mean, I think, and I've worked for a lot of startups, and sometimes they run into, and you and I both have, kind of a experience there. They started off big, right? Going after the big banks and then tried to bring themselves down, which they've done successfully. But we're taking the opposite approach. We're starting with the SMBs and then ultimately working our way up. The good news about this particular platform, I mean, it's been around for, I don't know, since 2015.
Because that's the WASA side.
The WASA side, yes. And it's highly scalable. And matter of fact, people like, Visa and NASA are using it on a pretty wide basis. So, but the SMBs are the ones who really need the help because they don't have the resources in terms of people and it's sometimes even expertise. And they're the ones that are going to get hit hard. And, when you think about it, when we always talk about the economy, we're always saying it's the small, medium-sized businesses that drive the economy. And if they start to take big hits in terms of, breaches, it's going to be trouble for everybody.
Well, the trends are kind of crazy too, because the first, let's say 7, 8, 10 years of hardcore cyber, it was big enterprise and big government that was the ones that got trashed all the time. Now, the course of the last 3 years, it seems like a lot of those enterprises had finally done enough to make themselves a somewhat harder target,
right?
With the exception of like OT fishing tanks inside of hotels or whatever. Yeah. But then the bad guys, they just follow just like predatory animals. They're like, oh, there's a bunch of slow gazelle. They go for the SMBs.
Exactly.
And now the SMBs are going, well, what the hell do we do? Because they're the ones introducing the risk to the enterprise. Vendors, third parties, tractors. And then there's the insurance side of this equation, which is getting bigger all the time. Yeah. Are you guys going to have capabilities that are going to fit into solving some of those problems as well?
Well, we look at from a vertical perspective, cyber is a little bit different than some of the other ERP players because it's really the verticalization, the industry pieces are kind of lined up against the compliance frameworks, right? And whether it's HIPAA for the health insurance side or some of the NIST frameworks on the federal side, right? PCI DSS for credit card, right? We see SOC 2 a lot, which is a little bit more generic. It gives you sort of that baseline, but the technical requirements and the control requirements sort of sit along those dimensions, right? And I think to your point, right, especially given the third-party risk questions that have come up, it's kind of the rising tide carries all boats, except the tide right now is kind of on the security defense requirements, right? So the SMBs are the market now, which are playing catch up to a certain extent. We have one of our customers is moving into that arena, right? And so they've been asked to kind of pick up the pace a little bit because of who they're selling to, right? Yeah. They said, well, no, this is your baseline. And, lo and behold, when they look kind of at where we are and need to be, right, there's a bunch of gaps. Now, those are compliance gaps, but those are at the same time, they're serious defense risks, right? And that's why, they get captured in all the blast radius of all these sort of nation-state funded actors that are scanning for, well, what's my weakest link, right? Where can I do damage, right? And I think that's the piece that a lot of companies and organizations miss, right? It's that second layer of cyber. It's like, okay, well, this bank got hit, right? Or like this healthcare company got hit. But like, okay, well, where did it come from?
Yeah. What was the point of origin?
Right. And what was their intent, right? Okay, so you're looking at, specific pieces of the infrastructure, and they're looking at specific CVEs, right, that they're looking to exploit. And then they have this massive automated infrastructure to scan the marketplace for these CVEs and then deploy and just cause damage. They don't care ultimately, right? They may be targeting the West, right? Yeah. And they might be targeting a specific industry which has a specific technology stack, right? But that's kind of the underlying layer, right? You sit there as an SMB, hey, I'm a small guy, right? Why are they looking at me? And it's like, first of all, you're up against a nation state actor, right? Even though you don't know that you are, right? And you need to defend, otherwise the alternative is, right, you got malware and, you're doing a full reset on the business side, right? It's not like, hey, I've got a hiccup and I had a couple hours of downtime.
No, it could be out of business.
Absolutely, right?
Exactly.
So it's a very different kind of problem, right? Look, our existence stems from the fact that we feel like we can contribute to the solution, obviously, right? And in a way that has an approach that we think is, both meaningful, distinct, and unique relative to, hey, we've got the biggest and largest security products, and we're going to deploy them. This is our fixed price, and you're either going to have this tool and you're going to be, in a good place from a defense standpoint, or hey, you're kind of on your own.
Right.
Sorry about your luck.
Yeah. So we feel like, there's an alternative there that we want to provide to the market to give them an option, and the extensibility and the open part of it, I think, is significant in all areas of the stack, both the SMBs, because, we're open and we can reduce that price point, but also at the larger end and say, hey, look, instead of bolting another tool on, right, you can now integrate that stuff into a single interface and give yourself a fighting chance to defend, when the velocity has gone up, exponentially over the last, 12 to 18 months, right? So, it's a very interesting and fast moving market, no question. And, and the threat is real, right? Despite the fact that you may not be a nation state, acting on the defensive side, you still need to be prepared to fight in that battle one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of engaged in it. I mean, that's why I tell people during my sessions is like, it's a battlefield environment. The U.S. government declared cyberspace a warfighting domain. They're literally saying there, we opened the doors in 2010.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're all on it. As you brought up a really good point, which makes me want to ask the question to the CRO guy, is like the cost and pricing model on this. That's where most people, when you talk to SMBs, they go, oh, Jesus, like it's one more thing they have to do.
Right.
I think we're at the space where the technology now, like the systems you guys are deploying, it's affordable to be able to do this much more than it is affordable to not, and then just be out of business or, months of downtime.
Right.
Right. Is that
that is
price point is like either or?
Yeah. I mean, we break this thing down too by modules and what to do.
So there's like a Chinese dinner menu type thing.
Yeah. I mean, it gives you a place to start, and maybe you just stay there. But then of course, you can obviously expand out, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think the pricing model also too is that we're also going to target MSSPs heavily, and MSPs, because, they do a lot of work with the SMB end users. And, so we're making sure that our price that we're going to provide to the market has to fit in within that model.
Yeah,
right?
Put their margin on it and do.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the SMB end user isn't going to worry about the technology. They're worried about, are you keeping me safe, right? Yeah. And eliminating threats. But it will be priced for that marketplace.
I mean, I think too, like that's a lot of conversations I've been having with folks that are SMBs and whatever now. I tell them flat out, like, you should probably be with an MSP or MSSP, because I run my own small business. I hate taxes and I don't want to go to jail. Yeah. I have a lady that does my taxes for me. Yeah. Security, I think, should be kind of the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree.
Agree. Nowadays, like there's not really a good argument to say, well, I'm just going to do this myself because I maybe could.
Yeah. And also, another thing I wanted to mention is I think this is great for us, is that with a lot of the big boys, without mentioning names, they're collecting this data, and for compliance, they have to, hang on to data forever. Yeah, forever. And they have a model where they're charging you for the storage of that data. That's not going to be the case with us. So we're able to store it, but we're not charging you for it. And I think a lot of people are kind of getting fed up with that model. It's just becoming too expensive.
Well, I mean, adding pro services on top of stuff.
Exactly.
You get something where they sell it to you as this is supposed to be the most amazing thing in the universe. And
right.
Then, well, you want it to work.
That's excellent.
Yeah. And those are premium.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, but y'all's coming from open source.
Yeah.
Like this should be something where if somebody chose to do it themselves, they could.
Yeah.
I'm sure you.
Would do that. Exactly.
Or smart money would be to do it with an MSP or MSSP partner with SLAs and all those things.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
mean, is that the model that, I mean, I think to me that makes the most sense. Is that how y'all would describe it?
Yeah, I mean, we have the tools that we can share with the team that has the capabilities, but I think you mentioned earlier, and I think you're spot on, right? Like a couple of years ago, you might have been able to kind of be an amateur and be like, I can do enough to protect the environment, right? Like, and I'm seeing now, like even some resources that we're working with, like you just don't understand the scope of the problem, right? Like you go on holiday for 3 days and you come back and the business is gone. Okay, and it's not because you didn't have the systems in place, right?
Yeah, one misconfiguration.
Right, or you had an alert. The system did what it was supposed to do, but nobody was manning the store, right? So, the scope and the scale and the velocity today are not the same, right? So, I think if you have a digital infrastructure that you need to defend, right, I think your best bet is to look for a provider to help you give you that, that defense posture. And, we want to empower those MSPs to be able to provide that solution to the marketplace. We can also help teams directly, but I think you're spot on, right? What we're finding, even in some of the direct situations that we're in, like you really should have a provider in here, right? Yeah. Like you don't want to be late on patches, right? Like, I know it's inconvenient. I know it's a pain, right? You got to coordinate some stuff, and hey, I don't want to touch that system, right? And then you wake up, and the bad guys came in.
They'll patch it for you.
Yeah,
Exactly. They'll patch it for you.
It's just, and you don't know whether it's this patch or the next patch, or you don't know what the entry point is. And their scanning capability and the automations that we talked about in the agentic AI, they're going to find the opening. Yeah, right. Right? You're not going to be in a place now where like, they're not going to find it, right? Like that's not a great bet.
There's no more scale. There's no more, security by obscurity.
Yeah.
Those days are over.
Right.
Massive scanning is going on. I mean, if you're really looking at, and a lot of people don't even have this level of visibility, right? But every time we stand up a network intrusion detection system, right? It's like, now you start to see what's going on a daily basis. And that's the place where usually the light bulb goes off for people. Mm-hmm. Like all of the bad actor automation that's going on right outside your network perimeter, once that window opens for you, you're like, oh my God, like, yeah, that's the world that you live in. That's your neighborhood. You may have, not realized it before, right? But so if that's automated and going on all the time, right? Like all they need is one opening for a vulnerability and a patch to go out, right? And now they're inside, right? And that scope and scale really requires a certain level of professionalism and meticulousness, right? Yeah. To make sure that you're buttoned up on a go-forward basis, 24/7, 365.
I feed the beast.
And that really took off, I think, over the last couple of years where, with XDR, then becoming MDR, I was with a large company where, they didn't make a product change. They just bundled,
Yeah, or you take the X and you call it them or the...
Yeah, exactly. But, their sales went up.
Oh, yeah.
Along with
PowerPoint stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it shows that people want that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
they need it. They have to have it, right? They absolutely need it. So it's a really interesting space where there's a lot of downside risk, and at the same time we feel like that's an opportunity for really good, valuable teams and valuable products to hit the market and make a difference at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that I think we forget about in this space so much is there's so much. I mean, it's a great space for growing a business and serving people and whatever else. But I mean, like there's I don't know about you guys, but for me, I believe in a digital world, every person has the human right to be safe online.
Yeah.
And somehow that gets lost in all the mix with all this stuff. It's like, oh, we could sell you more of this. Like, but why?
Right.
If I can help you, especially for an SMB,
right.
You're feeding your kids and family and community or whatever else.
Yeah.
It is your lifeblood, and being able to do it at speed and scale.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in an age where automation is making this stuff doable.
Yeah. I mean,
SMBs in general have so many reasons that they can go out of business. It's like,
there's 1,000.
It's like, there's like
I wake up every day like, please God.
80% of businesses, new businesses by 10 years are out.
Yeah.
You don't need this other thing.
Additional stress on especially additional stress where you don't have the talent and the skills and the background, whatever else.
Exactly.
Help it figure it out.
Exactly.
I think I saw CMMC level 2 now that's coming. it's 15,000 companies minimum.
Right.
That they're saying like by, I want to say October 1, 2026. Wow.
A lot of work.
Oh, there's people there that, I mean, it might literally seriously clean the toilets on an Air Force base in Minot, North Dakota.
Right.
What's your CMMC compliance level?
Yeah, exactly.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, that market's just going to blow through the roof.
Yeah. And that's the response to the third-party risk
Problem. Right.
Exactly.
It's like, what do you do?
The government finally just was like,
right? Just it's like a massive, solve that's probably over, it's probably too much ultimately, but
for sure.
it's that's the only solution they can have to the complexity of their whole supply chain infrastructure, right? Because you look at like a solar winds type example, right? It's like some second or third party product that somehow is now deployed everywhere. You had a bunch of Salesforce breaches in the last couple of weeks, even, right? It's like, hold on, I'm using Salesforce as a CRM, and now hold on, now I've got all my client data now that's all been exposed relative to that, right? Like, and they're not doing the crossing the T's and dotting the I's on the Salesforce, compliance framework.
Well, no,
right?
there's of and in.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Of is, they'll give you of.
Yeah.
In is your problem.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's for these companies, right? They're just, they have a big problem, right? And they don't have the expertise to really navigate through it. And they might feel safe, but it's really a domain where you really need some folks that are professionals to be able to come in and really help and mitigate the risk and at least show you the risk landscape so you can make good business decisions, right? I mean, some of the people that we talk to, like, they don't have a full understanding of what's going on, right? You read a couple articles, they think, well, I'm covered because I, bolted on one or two of these cloud services products, so I'm safe, right? And it's like, no, you're not, right? But you have to educate them to a certain extent, and even that sometimes, right? Like, unfortunately, sometimes it takes an incident for people to really learn their lesson.
He is the ultimate educator.
Yeah.
Or at least you.
Sadly.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? I mean, what's the plan for y'all over the course of the next, 18 months or wherever? Where does Athena Security Group go near future?
Well, we have, first is to kind of get out into the market and find our, our customers and our people at the end of the day that, believe in the mission and our strategy, right, and our philosophy. And at the same time, continue to, innovate on the AI front in terms of, integrating the operational capabilities, but also extending the language model capabilities, right, so that we're really pushing the edge there. And also on the anomaly detection piece, that we feel is going to be really important to handle those 0 days on top of the signature-based alerts. So we'll basically be able to have kind of a full complement on the detection piece and the response piece to really give people a really good option around XDR, AI-capable XDR. I mean, that's our vision. And we think because of our open architecture and because of our background, I'm a PhD candidate in computer science, working on the AI models. We have a lab. We have a couple of PhDs that are pushing those avenues forward. We feel like we're going to be very well positioned there in a cost-effective way that our customers can take advantage of that. So they're not, they don't have to go with the larger providers that have some of these advanced AI capabilities and that's their only option, because we feel they're going to be necessary conditions for proper cyber defense, right? So, that's at least certainly the next 6 to 12 months for us. And then, where we are towards the end of 26 and the early part of 27 in terms of AI capabilities, and for cyber in particular, it'd be really interesting to see where we are.
I mean, Moore's law is pretty much out the door.
Yeah, exactly.
Rolling over to his grave now. It's like rotisserie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, transistors is 2x whatever. No.
Yeah. Exactly.
We ain't building hardware to do that. It's just software that's doing it.
Right.
I mean, what you were going to provide, I just like to wrap up on, if you're going to tell somebody one thing not to do in this space, if you're going to talk to a potential customer and they were saying, like, Athena Security Group, what should I not do? What would the not do? And this is for both of you. Like, tell them what not to do. Everyone knows what to do. That's the Tony Robbins thing.
Yeah. I would tell people, you don't go alone
because you don't have to.
The two things that we bring to the table, having the product being open source and having an entire community, increasing its capabilities, exponentially, if you will. That's one. And then the people who are going to be managing the SOC that, we're going to help provide is going to get, and then embedding AI, those things are going to allow you to keep up, let's say, with what, the adversaries are doing and not killing yourself while you're doing it. So I guess I would say, don't go it alone.
I think it's sound advice and your perspective.
I mean, you want to make sure that you're properly tooled to have visibility into what's happening, right? So you understand the threat landscape. And then as a business owner, you can then make a risk mitigation and a business decision about, how much in defense you want to invest in, right? And that requires full knowledge of the whole landscape around security operations. And a lot of what we see, to address the question of what not to do, is, hey, well, I stood up this cloud system and that cloud system, and then I got this endpoint and whatever, and I feel safe, right? And it's like, that is a bad formula over time, because you not only do you kind of feel safe and you're not really, but you don't have the full visibility, and you don't have a system that allows you to respond in as rapid a time as necessary. And then so now you're building these kind of this cyber debt, technical debt, if you will.
Oh, way to put it.
That you got to then ultimately you're going to have to pull together. So now you've made an investment in these tools, but you're not fully there. And now all of a sudden you're in a position where, okay, now I got to bolt other tools on, and now you're putting yourself in not an optimal position to defend, right? So, and that we see all the time. It's the path of least resistance, right? Stand up this thing, stand up that thing, right? Because all these big providers make it easy. But ultimately, what you're left with is sort of a bag full of stuff that you still are saddled with the same problem to pull it all together, right? So that's certainly a not best practice.
Chip, don't do that. Yeah, I talk to a few people on workshops and they talk about cyber. I say, if I sent you to Walmart and said, bake me a cake, but you've never been to Walmart before, how long would it take you to find all the ingredients to figure out how the hell to actually bake the cake?
Yeah.
Like, if it's there,
Yeah.
and sure, you could make an amazing cake.
Yeah.
But you need to kind of know where stuff is so that you can put it into said recipe.
Yeah, exactly.
Come out with it. Well, I think cyber debt, that's a good one. So
Yeah.
for the audience, I'm stealing that. So yeah. So well done. Thank you. I'll send you a royalty check.
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you're looking to solve these problems, AthenaSecurityGroup.ai, right? So not .com, not .io, .ai. So look them up. Go check these folks out. I want to thank you guys for giving me the time.
Thank you, Chip. Thank you.
This is, solving problems for SMB, and this market is where we need to be. So I really appreciate the effort y'all putting in.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Great stuff. Cool. Good.
You can just